Good afternoon and welcome to the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. It's a brand new week. It's Monday, the 11th of March, 2024. And this is program number 1142 of the Lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. I'm your host, Calix George Jr. Now, in addition to our FM frequency, that's 101.1 FM radio, you can also get us at our website. It is rcistlucia.com. We're also streaming live on our Facebook page. Just search for the official page of Radio Caribbean International. And of course, be sure to like and share that link, please, with your friends and family. If you want to call in to make a contribution to the program, to tell us what's on your plate today, the numbers to do so are 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. That's our mainline number here. And you can also call in via WhatsApp. And that number, as you should probably know by now, is 724-0008. Again, 724-0008. Now, today, some birthday greetings going out to Mr. Albert Fragis. Happy birthday to you, sir. Hope that you're having a fantastic birthday celebration. And also sending birthday greetings out to Fonda Knight. Happy birthday to you, Fonda. And we do hope that you're having a marvelous birthday celebration. Now, a bit of history for today. In the year 1502, Ismail I, he was the founder of the Safavid dynasty, was crowned Shah of Persia. In the year 1966, a military coup led by Indonesian General Suharto broke out. 1985, on this day, Mikhail Gorbachev replaced Konstantin Shinenko as the Soviet leader. 2011, on this day, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake struck 18 miles east of Sendai, Japan, and that triggered a tsunami which killed thousands of people and caused the second worst nuclear accident in history at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. And in 2018, China's National People's Congress approved the removal of term limits for a leader, allowing Xi Jinping to become president for life. And in 2020, on this day, COVID-19 was declared a pandemic by the head of the World Health Organization. And that was after 121,564 cases worldwide were recorded, as well as 4,373 deaths at that point, back on March the 11th, 2020. And we now move on to our dish of the day. The daily dish is brought with the kind compliments of our good friends at Tiles Plus.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. With all kind of tiles, come down to Tiles Plus. We also got gasway and vanity. Box, doors, you'll see. Come down, don't mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses, Jugozi Lanes, and Slack Street in Dufort. Telephone number 453-7939. Tiles Plus.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
Good day and welcome back to our program. Now, for our dish of the day, I did want to just make a mention of what we've noted, that is the first meeting of the Constitutional Reform Committee, which was appointed by the Parliament, by the government, in conjunction with the opposition. And that has been seen as a very long and coming matter regarding the issue of constitutional reform here in St. Lucia. The Constitution, of course, is the fundamental law. It's the supreme law of any state. And some countries have unwritten constitutions, like that of the United Kingdom. But most, as of now, most of the 193 independent countries around the world, in fact, they do have written constitutions. And they effectively set the framework for how the country runs. It sets a framework first and foremost for the rights of citizens, the responsibilities of citizens, what citizens can expect to enjoy by way of rights and freedoms. That usually comes in very early in any constitution, written constitution, and it effectively, gives sense to your ability to speak freely, to move freely, to be able to assemble and to associate freely, and of course it also gives some sense usually as to when those rights may in fact be curtailed as well. In particular, in dealing with war, in dealing with aggression from outside, and even in dealing with matters, in fact, as the way it is termed in our constitution, in dealing with pestilence and dealing with disease. There are instances, of course, where we have seen that these rights and freedoms can, in fact, be curtailed. And we saw a bit of that with respect to COVID-19, of course, which we are noting today in our history of the day, where, of course, those rights may very well have to be brought under some level of containment, and usually, of course, through states of emergency, but of course as well in other instances where individuals may in fact have been arrested or they are in some certain situation, you may find that, of course, those rights are also curtailed. So the issue of constitutional reform has largely, however, focused on the matter of good government, good governance, how well our constitution is actually delivering on the ability for government to act. And that, I think, is where there has been a fair bit of interest, of course, as part of the conversation. Now, in fact, there was a process which was fairly dated now, one can say, with respect to the report of the Constitution Reform Commission. Now, our Constitution, of course, dates back to 1978, and it is a creature of the United Kingdom Parliament, and sometimes these are called Westminster models of government. Sometimes they are also referred to as Lambeth Palace models as well, or Whitehall models rather, to give sense to the fact that although yes, we have taken on a sort of a British parliamentary system, it's a little bit different even from what exists at Westminster, and they were really products of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, or the Foreign and Colonial Office at one point in time, as it was known, of the UK government. And so sometimes even the provisions we're here within lend themselves to maintenance of even a certain character and association with the former colonial power. And we saw that quite recently, even in although that dealt primarily with the matter of our civil code and provisions within our civil code, which in fact had largely been collated way back in the 1950s and had been put together again even way beyond that in the late 1870s, that there were in fact provisions that said, hey, you effectively have to import British statute law, British laws that were declared by legislators in Westminster into your codex of laws here in St. Lucia. And that became a very interesting matter as it was revealed through the attempt by lawyers representing Mr. Alan Shastney in a defamation matter, a libel matter, effectively tried to pull in British statute law into the interpretation of the case that was to be heard involving him and another member of parliament, in fact. And so it really does speak to the importance of the legal system and the judiciary in sometimes pointing out the lapses that exist at the legislative level in terms of our legislation, because it is the work of the legislature to, in fact, ensure that we have good laws. And having good laws also means that you also have to ensure that the laws are kept up to date, that they are kept relevant, that they, in fact, represent what is best practice, what is seen as best practice in the current era. And so that certainly has been part of that challenge too. And so that maybe the laws that, or the Constitution that we had in 1978, just as we were then heading into independence, getting independence in the following year, that it may have made some sense then, but one can say certainly that we have the benefit of hindsight. We have the benefit of 45 years now of having to run this project of governance here in St. Lucia, and to see where the gaps are, where the areas for improvement exist, where the risks lie with respect to our system of governance. And one can say we perhaps did not even need those 45 years to see some of those problems, because we also had the benefit of seeing other systems of government and how they worked and the decisions that were taken by other islands to be able to address just that. But we went through the process, as I mentioned, of actually establishing a Constitution Reform Commission, and that was a number of years ago, and it was headed by the late Justice Susie Dovey, a High Court judge, and a number of other members brought in from different political parties, from civil society, from individuals who had a very strong interest in the matter of constitutional reform, to be able to effectively gain some level of consensus and dialogue with the country on the matter of its constitution and the way St. Lucians wanted to see this matter move forward. And eventually, I think this actually started back, was it in 2004? There was a decision of the House of Assembly, which in fact established this Constitutional Reform Commission. And a report was generated as a result of this commission and the work that it did, going around different parts of the island and having consultations, and it eventually generated this 190-point document, which made some very clear recommendations as to how they saw the changes to the Constitution being effected. And it looked at all the sectors of the Constitution and a number of the matters that people had been speaking about and were requesting changes to. So, of course, one of them was term limits. And just today, of course, in the news, in the history of today, we saw what happened in China recently with Xi Jinping, where there was in fact a provision within the system of government over in China, which insisted that the leader, albeit of course it's a communist country, but they still in fact even then had checks on the term limits of their leadership. And the practice before that was that Chinese leaders should only serve about 10 years. 2 consecutive terms is what they would be allowed. And of course, we then saw Xi Jinping changing that around, of course, wanting to be able to serve effectively unencumbered potentially for the rest of his life. And we can see how that can be very dangerous. We can see how that ends up creating despots, dictators. And the whole idea of having a term limit is to ensure that people do not get so ingrained in a system that, and of course, if they are very crafty in how they work through that system, they can work themselves into a point where they make it very difficult for them to, in fact, be removed. And of course, it becomes problematic when you have these kinds of situations, because you can see how corruption can get seeded in. We can see how the issue of abuse of power can become very much part of that culture where you have dictators, and you can see how it really can become very frustrating to the point that people believe they cannot reliably go to the polls and actually get a fair election, because in some instances even the entities that are supposed to be quote unquote maybe independent are really not independent, and so it becomes very, very problematic in this way. Now, of course, this issue of separation of powers is very much fundamental to the desire of most governance systems that are around the world right now. How do you ensure that no one individual, that no one body, that no one set of individuals has total power to be judge, jury, and executioner, to be able to engage in all aspects of decision making? And so this is exactly why, for instance, in the United States system, it is seen that there are 3 distinct areas of control and areas of power, being the executive authority, the legislative authority, executive authority being the power to make and execute policy and to be able to provide services to the people. The legislative power being that of being able to make the laws that create those overarching frameworks under which people can conduct their affairs and business. And of course, the judiciary, who are effectively the referees, so to speak, of the system, and who are expected to ensure that the law is followed, who are expected to provide justice and to ensure that there is redress for individuals, whether it may be in a civil matter, and whether it may be in their dealings with the state, and even, of course, when we're talking about matters involving criminal acts, where people have actually caused harm or have caused some form of injury, whether physical or otherwise, to other people. So it is very important that there is that distinction. Now, of course, even in the best of systems, we can see that it's still not perfect. So even in the United States of America, which is quite often seen as a bastion of democracy, we can see that the judiciary, like the Supreme Court, for instance, it still ends up having to be appointed by a president. Recommendations are coming from the executive, the head of the executive. The recommendations, albeit the idea is that, well, you have the legislature, and the legislature can then still has to agree on what the executive is recommending. They've got to sign off on it. But we can see how the impact of politics and philosophical leanings are actually sometimes very much front and center in the selection of judicial officers, Supreme Court justices, for instance, and how those individuals are sometimes chosen because they may be left-leaning or right-leaning, depending on whoever might be the president of the day. And we can see that it sometimes may very well have some possibilities for influencing the decisions of even these highest courts of the land. So it is certainly an impossibility to create a perfect system where you're going to have absolutely no collusion, no corruption. It's almost impossible to do so. But we can ensure, though, that we can place checks that make it a lot harder for those things to, in fact, exist. And so certainly the idea of the term limit is a major one in terms of keeping a check on how long an individual can actually serve as the president or the prime minister, as the case may be. In as much as there are term limits usually being suggested for presidents or heads of government, on the other end, we see, generally speaking, there aren't really usually term limits placed on members of parliament. And so you very well, and even in the United States system, you see that too. You see, congressmen, members of the House or senators, sometimes they end up staying for many, many years, for decades sometimes, in the service of the state. So some people think that it's a benefit, that there is a good benefit to, in fact, having some individuals staying over a long period of time, because you've got institutional memory, you have continuity, you sometimes do have that benefit, but it certainly has to be balanced in how actually the overall system is working, to ensure that you also have new thoughts coming forward, that you also have fresh ideas coming to the mix, and other individuals playing a part. So striking a balance, I think, is one of those very important principles which one would want to see in a good constitution that ensures that it is promoting participation from a broad cross-section of the society. Because what then quite often happens is that people feel that they don't have a voice, or they feel that they don't really have to go out and play a part in the franchise and in getting a government in place, in actually electing people. And that's a big issue, especially amongst young people who quite often see this thing as being very removed from their reality, that it really doesn't make a difference at the end of the day whether it is blue or red or yellow that ends up in the parliament on those seats, that that they don't have an opportunity to actually weigh in on their voice, on what is being done in their interest. Now, in some countries, they go the route of actually mandating, legislating that certain groups of people have a dedicated voice within that mix. And it becomes very important in countries that usually have minority groups, and so they will quite often have a certain number of members of parliament, for instance, who must come from that particular community. I think that is what effectively applies in a place like New Zealand with their Maori population. You see it in the case of Taiwan, the Aboriginal population there. In other countries, you do see that certain blocks of of representation are in fact mandated to say, hey, we must ensure that certain people have a vote in that mix. It is, I mean, as of now, when you think about it, the only division that we sort of have in the case of St. Lucia is a sort of a geographic division. We divide our voters based on where they happen to live. And in other places, of course, the issue of, well, are we getting enough of the youth constituency to be part of that process of making laws? Are we getting enough women to be getting involved in decision making in government? So sometimes you will have to see certain allowances that go beyond just maybe the measure of saying, well, you're 18 years old, you can vote now, or, well, yes, we have the right of women to vote, just as the right of men exists to vote, and we therefore say, well, that's enough, right? It's up to the people to therefore decide who, in fact, gets elected. So has that really worked out? Well, perhaps we still certainly have a long way to go, because at least in terms of the data, in terms of the historical data, we still have seen a significant underrepresentation of women in our parliament, beyond perhaps the efforts by various governments over the years, maybe to appoint female presiding officers and perhaps female senators, appointed positions. In terms of more women coming forward to the fore to put themselves up and to in fact get elected, that is still a challenge that the country is dealing with. And one can say that you see in all of these situations, you have these cultural biases that exist despite the system. So the Constitution has to be aware of some of these issues sometimes, and to ensure, in fact, that it sees some of those concerns. And so will we ever get to that point? We'll have to wait and see, in fact, on the matter of that type of representation. But the reality is, if we do get that kind of data coming out as to, well, how many of our young people are actually going out to the polls? When we say we have a voter turnout of 51%, who are those 49% who are in fact not taking up their right to vote, their right to actually determine who their representatives are? And then, of course, the big question is it that they're so disenfranchised that they don't even care about the process? They don't even think that, well, I can take those 2 hours out of my work day to go out and vote. It's not important. And then you begin to then wonder, well, how is that then impacting on the 5-year period in between, and people actually caring about their country? Because it really then might be suggesting that if you're not getting a very high voter turnout at elections, that a lot of people simply are disengaged, disconnected to the political process, the governance process, and they may very well be very frustrated. In some countries, staying home and not voting is sometimes seen as a protest, and that is perhaps something that could be looked at, and if it's being interpreted in that way. In other countries, however, like in Australia, I think there is in fact a mandatory requirement for people to actually go out and vote. Is that something we'd actually like to see in the case of St. Lucia? Again, as we speak about Australia and different systems, they have a 3-year term for their government. Is that something that we'd like to see? Is 5 years too long? Is 5 years too short? Or is it just right? And so many of these issues, some of them have not even actually come up, even within the constitutional reform Commission report. But many of these issues, no doubt, will have to be looked at by this new committee that's looking at the reviewing that report, which was submitted, I think, way back in 2000 and I think it was submitted eventually in 2009. I think it came to Parliament eventually in 2015. And so that committee, which finally met on March the 6th, includes the chairman, the Speaker of the House, Honorable Claudius Francis, as well as Deputy Chairman, Mr. Ignatius Jha, former Member of Parliament, former Minister, and as well Mr. Everestus Jamari, Mr. Earl Huntley, Miss Catherine Seelys, Professor Cynthia Barrow, Mr. Maurice Compton, Mr. Nicholas John, Mr. Leonard Montoute, Miss Mary Francis, the Member of Parliament for Choiseul Saltibus, the Honourable Bradley Felix, as well as the Member of Parliament and Leader of the Opposition, Member of Parliament for Miku South and Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Alan Shastney. And so that is the composition of that committee. As to what the timelines are, I suppose we'll have to hear about that, but the next meeting of that committee is scheduled in April of 2024. That's our dish of the day. When we come back, we're going to take in our weather report and then back to the phones to take in some calls.
This has been The Daily Dish.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. With all kind of tiles, come down to Tiles Plus. We also got gasway and vanity. Books, doors, you'll see. Come down, don't mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses Juguzile, and Slack Street in Dufort. Telephone number 453-7939.
Island style, yeah. We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, yeah. We'll have to make the right choice. Island style, whoa. We got the time that will make you happy. Island style, oh yeah. We make your dream come alive in Island style.
We have tiles and thin sets, pieces and ground. Everything you need to sort the house out. For the best price and the latest style, take a little drive down to Island Style Car.
We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, quality, price, service, choice. It's all an Island Style.
Visit us at our showrooms in Bellarosa, Rodney Bay, on the John Compton Highway, Castries, and behind Ruby's Gas Station on the Library Viewfort Highway. So call us on 450-452 or 453-TILE. Island Style Tile and Bath. When you think tile, think Island Style.
This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the weather news.
And that's of course, to the 1.1. It's now time for your weather report as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Talent Bar. The forecast for St. Lucia valid for the next 24 hours. Winds will be blowing from the east, northeast, near 50 miles per hour or 24 kilometers per hour. The weather, partly cloudy skies becoming cloudy at times with some periods of light and moderate showers. The forecast for the Los Angeles, fair to occasionally cloudy skies with a few showers. And the weather summary. The Atlantic high pressure system will generate light and moderate easterly winds across the Eastern Caribbean region during the next couple of days. Patches of low-level clouds drifting along the wind flow will cause some cloudy periods of showers over the islands during the next 24 hours. And this was the weather report as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Talent Bath.
This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline at 454-3452. RCI 101 number 1.
Island style, yeah. We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, yeah. We'll have to make the right choice. Island style, whoa. We got the time that
Tin sets, mixers and ground. Everything you need is on the house out. For the best price and the latest style. Take a little drive down to Island Style Car.
We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, quality price, service choice. It's all at Island Style.
Visit us at our showrooms in Belarus, Rodney Bay, on the John Compton Highway, Cass Street, and behind Ruby's Gas Station on the Library Viewfort Highway. Or call us on 450-452 or 453-TILE. Island Style Tile and Bath. When you think tile, think Island Style.
And welcome to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. We're back again, and of course we're going to head to the phone lines. The number to call in to tell us what's on your plate is 4523046. We've got a call online. I think good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today?
Good afternoon, Mr. George.
How are you doing, sir?
How are you?
Very good, thank you. How are
How
you
was
doing?
your weekend?
Very blessed. It was quite enjoyable.
The madam all right?
She's very good, thank you. Thanks
Okay,
for
and
asking.
your dad?
Oh, he's very good as well.
Okay.
Very good.
Mr. George, have you heard about the planned increases by the next month so of flow rates and so on?
Oh, no, I was not aware of that.
You wasn't aware of that, eh?
No.
Well, that's to show you. that speaks to where I'm going. Because, isn't there a process that needs to be adhered to, followed when you're dealing with rates increase for regulated company thing?
Well, I know that's a rhetorical question from you because you would know more than any that certainly, yes, there is in fact a very clear process which would involve the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission and I believe the ECTEL, Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications Regulatory
That's why
Authority.
you have a regulation in place.
Yes.
Or are we going to follow the custom? Because I heard at a press conference, the minister of in charge of water said that Wasco should get an increase. As if urging Wasco, urging the public to grant Wasco, telling them that Wasco deserves an increase. To me, that's not the remit. That's not the remit of. That's not the thing of the minister. That must come from the company, must apply for a review and present all what's in the information necessary to do a review by the regulator. And if it's fair, all right, you have to take into consideration the customer. It's not just saying that, inflation due to inflation and this and that and the high cost of inputs and okay, we know that's there, but then you still have to come and show us your books to show us that you're running an efficient service. Tariffs are based on efficient services. You can't be operating mediocre or even half standard or 75 and expect to get a tariff. You need to as close to 100 as possible to justify a tariff increase. Because it's based on efficient costs.
Well, you've got to show that there's good value for money, that the entity is delivering a service.
The what?
I said you have to show that what the consumer is receiving is good value for money. So they are in fact. So
have they shown that?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so. As far as I know, as you mentioned,
obviously, my brother,
we would have had to have gone through. They would have had.
Somebody like you should have known if there were consultations.
Well, exactly.
As I know, there were no consultations.
So it would have had to have involved the National Utilities Regulatory Commission.
Absolutely.
And there would have been
not National Utilities Regulation, NTRC.
No. But you just spoke about water.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the water.
No, yeah. Brasco would have had to say to the thing.
Made an application for
our audited statements or what have you.
Right.
And likewise, with telecoms to telecom regulator, which is the NTRC,
Right.
National Telecommunication Regulatory Commission.
That's correct.
All right? And then they take it from there. You know, they do all the thing because, I mean, working out tariff is kind of, it's not cut and dry. It could be complicated.
And well, it's
Eh?
it's also a little bit more complicated now because
Exactly.
you have a lot of bundling
It's
of.
highly mathematical and,
That
know,
is correct. Yeah. So
Yeah,
you've got
you
to
would do that.
disaggregate. You've got to disaggregate
all kind of thing in it because
these
it's not even
components.
your run-of-the-mill accountant or even you could do that. It's a specialist area.
Yes, that is
So
correct.
you have to show that at the end of the day is that and this, whatever increase there and there, whatever for each services is justified. And then you announce, you know, but you still have to get the approval of when the NTRC approves or if they approve, they submit their approval to cabinet and then the minister would say, well, such and such. You know, and you go ahead.
Mhm.
But to me, I'm just out of the blue hearing that this guy is going to increase the thing.
Where
over the
where
whole
where did you
region.
hear that? Was that
Over the whole region. And it seems that it's justified because I'm saying, well, but it's not only here alone. Everywhere recognize that. And I mean, what's happening? And what we paying all them regulators for, boy? Alex?
over the whole region, meaning over the Eastern Caribbean?
Well, I don't know if it includes the wider Caribbean because they say in the Caribbean, I guess, where they operate in the Caribbean. Flow.
Well, they still, regardless of where they operate, in each jurisdiction,
So you see,
they have to go through a
we move
process.
from a monopoly situation to a duopoly thing. You know what Flow take, Digicel take in, and both of them join in to squeeze we. And nobody who's going to stand for us, Alex? Who's standing for us? The consumer.
Well, it is, there's a state, there's a government that has to, has a role, right? As well
Exactly.
as,
The state, they have to create that balance.
yeah, so,
So when you have the state calling for the increase now, how does that leave us?
well, yeah, so,
As in the case of the water.
yeah, in the case of the water, yeah, I mean, the minister perhaps should reserve an opinion on that matter because
Of
the
course,
minister,
does he know that these people don't understand regulation, you know. These people in government for so long, and to me, a lot of basic fundamental things,
yeah,
you
the
know, showing
important,
that what have they learned, man?
it's important that it's like in the ministry,
We're not saying that an increase in water rates might, at the end of the day, be justifiable. You know what I'm saying? Your father would know that too, because he was the only one, only during his tenure.
yeah, there was an increase in rates.
got a big increase during the double it when he first took on the ministry.
Yeah,
And
that was
I was
before
chairman. He wasn't minister anymore. It was minister.
Finister.
No, the other one, Fletcher.
Oh, okay.
When they were granted another increase, the 60-something% of which
right,
part
yes,
was the dredging of the dam.
right, yes,
Right.
the dredging fee. Yes.
Yeah, because they submit the documents and we reviewed them. You know,
Right.
We had consultants to review. We met with everybody. We met with the Employers Federation. We met with everybody, man. And we met if everybody was interested, you know, to have a comment, to have a view, to have an opinion, you know, on these things.
Yeah,
And there you have people just, in one case, the minister calling for the increase. So he preempting the regulator there, you know.
okay. I haven't actually heard what he said, so I
Well, I haven't heard, but I was told that he said that Wasco needs an increase. Anyway.
Well, okay. I don't know the context of what
the other
what
one,
he
the
said.
other one.
But the other one too, I have not actually heard about.
Yeah, the other one. I mean, I
the
don't know. I
increase.
don't know where we going, man.
On
Or
telecommunications
you know,
rates.
the things we had
So-
in place that to improve governance in this country. I mean, governments wasting these things down. What do you expect for the youth? When the youth stop believing in our institutions, and quick to grab onto conspiracy theories and things,
Right.
blaming them.
Right.
But
right.
you know, I mean, we set up these institutions to protect the public
Mhm.
against the excesses of whether it be business or government. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Anyway, Mr. George, thanks
Well,
for your
thanks
time.
for your intervention, caller, and certainly this is something that we have to keep very strongly on the radar, because we have seen over the years how we as a people, as a region, have been pilloried by utility companies that have come out of a post and neo-colonial era. And they were effectively the remnants of a lot of the institutions that were established under the colonial time to effectively, well, yes, you could say provide some level of service, yes, but also to extract as much as possible and to ensure that that is going back, being remitted to the colonial power. And we've seen it in nearly every single sector. That is the system that was put in place, whether you're talking about banking and financial services, whether you're talking about infrastructure, road construction, whether you talk about, in this instance, telecommunications. These firms effectively had the backing of the parent company and the country within from which the parent company came from. And in the case of the Caribbean, in terms of telecommunications, of course, we do know that we had a monopolistic arrangement for many years with exclusive licenses being in place, which effectively allowed for these companies to operate for 50 years or 99 years, whatever. Well, maybe not 99, but 50 years or sometimes even 80 years. Yeah, very, very long periods within which they were guaranteed quite often profits. But the thing is that in some instances the profits were tremendously excessive. And certainly in the case of the region, when you look at the region as a profit center, and you look at where that company was operating all around the world, the Caribbean was by far the most lucrative part of their operations, where they made the most profit. And in particular, St. Lucia was exceedingly high when it came to the highest in the world when it came to profit margins in that area. So this is perhaps something that many in the younger generation have taken for granted. Right now, we take telecommunications for granted. The fact that we can talk about ICT, information communications technology, social media. We can talk about this landscape that we see right now, where we things that we take for granted, like voice over IP, and IP-driven systems that allow for us to be able to make free calls, allow for us to be able to share videos and a whole host of applications that did not exist 20 years ago. And it perhaps would have taken an even longer time to get to our neck of the woods if it had in fact we not been able to ensure that sector was liberalized. So there are many things that we enjoy and we take for granted, even the economic benefits that has accrued to this. So we can talk about business process outsourcing, BPO. That's a big thing. The former Prime Minister, Mr. Shastney, I remember, was very big on talking about, look at the call centers, that came in. And a lot of that, of course, was because you had the infrastructure, the framework in place to ensure that those things could operate. Right? If that was not in place, then you would not be able to enjoy those economic benefits. Let's take a call at this time. Good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today?
Yes, good afternoon. Just with reference to your comment about the price of telecommunications in St. Lucia over 20 years ago. When they say make a call from Castries to Sufred out of Street as a trunk call.
A trunk call, yes.
Yes, and I think it worked out to be about $5 an hour, to speak, on that trunk call. So it was actually cheaper to actually drive to Sufred and back than to speak to somebody,
$5 an hour alone?
Yeah, but then,
I think it was more than that.
Well, and also to the price of fuel at the time was of gas in St. Lucia was $5 per gallon. So it was actually, cheaper to actually drive to Sufred.
Oh, well, yeah, because I think weren't trunk calls, like 25 cents? I mean, I can't remember the exact rates, but I think there were some that were 25 cents per minute, wasn't it?
But I think it was, I just recall, if I recall correctly, it was actually,
Yeah, but that would work out to be about $15. If it was at 25 cents, using that rate, it would be about $15 an hour. So
I think it wasn't so much, but it was just, I just knew it was, always cheaper to just drive down.
To drive down, speak to the person and drive back.
Yeah, than to make a call.
Imagine
that.
Yes, definitely. And I think some people may not even know what a trunk call is right now.
Right.
But because that has, it's arcane. It's gone out of use for so long.
Yes, and we had several, even within St. Lucia, they had several, trunk zones, so to speak. So
right. So I think even between Castries and Grosley was a trunk call. And that's definitely a case where you could have driven and come back.
It's almost like, we were treating, St. Lucia like a continent,
That's correct. That is correct. Yeah. Quite ridiculous indeed. Thanks very much for that intervention, caller.
All right, no problem.
Bringing us back down memory lane. But the matter of trunk calls, for those who are not familiar with that terminology, was that there was where it came out of was back in the day, in the early days of telephones. You used to have telephone exchanges, and in those exchanges, they were literally operators who would have had to physically make a connection so that put through your call from one exchange to the next, and so that's how you because of the distance that you were talking about, and so it wasn't, the technology only permitted you to go so far. So different places had these exchanges in place so that you can then interconnect to your call. Now, that has gone out of the door years and years and years before, and obviously everything was automated and the system had been modernized, and but people were still paying for this trunk call idea that the person was outside of your zone, and so the island ended up being divided up into many different zones, within which they, from one to the next, you would then have to pay this higher rate. So maybe if you were in Grosley, you could call at a much easier rate within Grosley. But beyond that, if you had to call your friend in Castries or your grandmother in Dennery, or whoever the case may be in Viewfort, you end up having to incur this additional call. And of course, the other area where you had very high rates was the matter of international calling, and we could see that in some places it was very, very steep, and I think it went as high as $9 a minute, from what I recall. I think if you had to call Australia or some parts of Asia, it would have gone up to that extent. So certainly, the idea that you could just use WhatsApp to reach somebody in Australia, or even use your mobile and to just call somebody in Korea, or wherever the case may be, that was not so straightforward at all. Let's take another call at this time. Good afternoon. Welcome to the lunchroom. And what's on your plate today? Hello. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, caller. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. But
Good.
This is one thing I don't understand with Flo. Why are you raising on All Foods Day?
Oh, so you've heard the announcement? What exactly, if you could just share with us, what is being said?
Well, my cousin called me and she told me that she received a text on the phone saying that as of the 1st of April, there will be an increase, and also that an adjustment, you're going to get faster internet and all sorts of things. But when she told me that, I did call Flo and find out what is going on. But I spoke to a lady, she told me, well, there was nothing on the website to show that there was any increase or anything like that. But if it comes on people's phone, maybe then that the company is doing that. But she could not tell me if it was being done for true. But my cousin told me it's April 1st, because last year they raised it on April 1st also by $5.
What was raised by $5?
Your flow bill.
As a whole, it was okay. So your that's the basic.
Yes.
Rate was okay.
Yes, because like example, I have a bundle, and if my bundle is $230, when after the raise last year, it came to $235.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So but last year it was on the same 1st of April, and this year again is on the same 1st of April. So
okay.
Why all foods they see to raise?
Well, I'm not sure that the date.
It's a joke.
Well, maybe so, but beyond the date, though, I mean, there is certainly a process, and I would hope, of course, maybe the various entities like NTRC need to perhaps ensure that the public is made aware of the decisions that are coming out of the NTRC, so that they can know, well, this is in fact is in line with what has been requested, and there's a clarity with respect to that, because I think that's where we're not sure what is the justification, what is the basis for some of these changes, and so certainly there's a right of the public to know what's causing it. Yeah. I mean, if it's not I don't know if people may argue, well, what is a steep increase? I'm not sure what the increases are working out to be, but it would be useful to know and the context of what is being done there.
Yeah, because I receive the only thing that when they give you the bundle, like your example of the model, you get, I would say you get like 3 calls to international, 3 calls. You get international calls to both Flow and Digicel.
Right.
You get, which, I would say sometimes I'm quite satisfied, because usually I have my landline and I usually like to make calls and all sorts of things.
Right.
Given that, and once you do not surpass the minutes they give you, you're good to go.
Right.
But so it's my best sometimes to avoid not to using too much cell calls or allowing anybody to use cell calls. But then, before you raise something, and the thing, the service I would call, and then I have no problem with them sending somebody immediately, and sometimes even might give me an extra, look on that, remote or, different things, so that if anything. But then still, when you're going to do something like that, speak to people first, let them know that, you're going for this, you're going for that, and you need to increase. But don't just send text until some people are not ready for, the increase sometimes. So you have to think of these kind of things before they do the increase. Right.
Yeah, and I mean, it's clearly that it's changing significantly, the market. I mean, as you're rightfully saying, sometimes we have services that people are not using as much as before. So you find that there's been, as time will go on, people will be using a lot more data, as opposed to even, a lot of people have even given up their landlines at their homes. They don't have one existing, or they hardly use it. You find a lot of individuals using less cable. They're transitioning to other forms of getting the news and getting entertainment. They still have their TVs, but they're broadcasting through other means. And so you are seeing that the way that those companies are working is to try to bundle everything together to ensure that, you still have to take a package, regardless of whether you use one aspect of it or the other more than the other. So you may not be using your cable TV very much, but it's still part of that bundle. So it is part of that challenge, I guess, of how do you transition with all these various entities. There may very well become a point where some of them will just become defunct, and we've seen some attempts by some companies to just.
But yet they should still give you a choice, because example, you have some the elderly blind people and people with disability. Now you find some of them would have the fixed line at their home, and because of now they're pushing you into having that bundle and cafe in the boxes, they lose that this fixed line that which they depend on to correspond for the people, for them to communicate, call somebody here. They cannot even do. I guess I know for certain one gentleman, he's almost 80, and that was what he was. He used all the time to call everybody to say hello. That's how you check on him. But then you came and you just tell him it's not like that anymore, and you're going to put a box, and left alone with just having to use a cell phone. When you have somebody's elderly person totally blind and depending on the fixed line, and now you're telling them this, and he has a cell phone. Now trying to contact him, sometimes it's not even possible to do so. I mean, they have to think of all of these things. It's a little troubling that the way those people do things, they do not think over the people. It's just that it's about just making money and things, so I'm not thinking of others that really depend on the service. And these are people that will pay their bills almost every month. What a problem.
Yeah, well, these changes are very difficult to manage sometimes for some people who it's a little bit more difficult for them to adapt. And so certainly, I guess they have to be a little bit sensitive as to, it may be that the change has to come. We don't know necessarily because there's sometimes a lot of costs in terms of maintaining certain infrastructure that they have, certain parts of the network, and it's cheaper for them to be able to provide it on, let's just say, a data service alone, but on IP-based system alone, I should say. But and it may very well redound to everybody's benefit. But it then means that how you deal with some customers, they may need a little bit more help than others.
Yes.
So we'll have to see how that can be affected. So it's good that you're raising that point, though, because certainly I know a lot of individuals who are very concerned about that, the progression to this new system, and especially in terms of when you have no power, what happens in that situation. As well in the case of an emergency. So still something that has to be worked out, those kinks. Yep. Thanks very much for that conversation, caller. Have a good one. And I think we're going to have to put an end to it at this point because we're over 2 o'clock. And so we do hope that you can join us again tomorrow, God willing, for another program here of the Lunchroom at Radio Caribbean International. Have a good one.